What's good, YouTube? I got this question from Instagram. Somebody asked me, how can I get more "what do you need" texts instead of "what are you doing" texts? Now, I guess the difference between a "what do you need" versus "what are you doing" text is the intention of a man to either entertain himself with you or to get close to you or to build with you, right? The thing is this, you said texts. You're not going to get "what do you need" texts before you get "what do you need" phone calls, right? There's an evolutionary process that has to happen that a guy connects himself to what you're going through, and a guy connects himself to you mentally and psychologically and emotionally. A guy who's not connected to you mentally is not going to ask you, "what do you need?" A guy who's not connected to you emotionally doesn't care what you need as much, right? We all have a decent amount of empathy, even the worst of us. But for the most part, if you're not connected to a guy emotionally, you're not going to get "what do you need" texts. If you're texting people and that's the way you're trying to get close, you are almost, to be quite honest, I don't think you ever get to the "what you need" type of text, because a text is so impersonal and it's so lazy anyway. It's not an investment of time. It's not something that draws out the best of people. You feel more familiar to people than you are when you're texting them, and for the most part, they don't have to grow with you. People who are calling you, who are needing to hear your voice, who are trying to absorb your energy, those are the types of people who might be more interested in what you need versus what you are doing. So in general, a guy who's only asking what you are doing is interested in the fun or the pleasure of it all. A guy who's asking you what you need is looking long term, or at least for the foreseeable future. So in order to establish what you need versus what you're doing texts, you have to actually get guys to commit themselves to speaking with you on a regular basis and invest themselves in who you are as a person and the result of your life. If a guy is not concerned with the result of your life, if he's not if he doesn't have a personal stake in not only your immediate future, but your foreseeable future, he doesn't plan on being there. If he doesn't plan on being present, you're not going to get the "what do you need" text because he doesn't have that same level of interest. He doesn't have that same intent to love. A guy with an intent to love wonders what you need. A guy with an intent to have fun wonders what you're doing and if you could be doing something with him. A lot of times, a guy might care about you and just not understand how to break that barrier. But for the most part, if the way you primarily communicate is text, and I see, or I'm thinking that because of the way that you ask that question, that has to be your primary goal. Your primary communication method is texting. As long as that's your primary communication method, it's very unlikely, to me anyway, and I'm old school, that you'll get "what are you doing" texts or "what are you doing" calls or anything like that. You have to grow with men on the phone. You have to grow with men through in-person conversation and through phone conversations, FaceTimes. You have to have long exchanges where people really get to know the base of who you are, and if that's not a thing that you're focused on, if you're just focused on the connection or the chemistry or whatever women call it when they have a crush on the guy, because that's basically all that it is, connection, chemistry, that's just crush. But if you're just focused on those things and you're not requiring those long conversations about your backgrounds and those long conversations about your belief systems and those long conversations about the energies and things that you believe in and things that make you who you are, if you're not having those exchanges, it's very difficult for somebody to get to know you well enough, to care enough through text message to be like, what do you need? What can I do for you? What can I supply in your life? That's not a thing that is happening for a lot of women. Most women are just struggling to get out of the sex zone. That's the next phase of evolution for a relationship. It's for a guy to care about the result of your life and therefore want to be of service to you. Service is love, right? And so what you're asking me is, how can I get a guy to love me? I think that to get a guy to love you, you need to require that intent to love, to get continuous access to you. So many women are wasting their times and they're hanging out with guys and giving their time to guys who don't have an intent to love them or care about them, who are only trying to entertain themselves with their presence. And while that's cool, and some people only want that entertainment, that simple companionship, if you want somebody to care about what you need, then you need to require first legitimate investments from people, legitimate connections with people, not just crushes, but time, but presence, but consistency. The difference between a what are you doing text and a what do you need text is insane. It's the difference between a guy being willing to love you and planning to love you and attempting to love you and offering you his love, versus a guy offering you his presence or his entertainment, if you will. We often focus so much on the connection part, and women often focus so much on the way a guy makes them feel, whether he gives them butterflies or whether they feel sparks or feel what they call a connection, that they don't even closely enough observe what their intrinsic needs are, what their emotional needs are, what their psychological needs are. You know, based on your background, you need a few things, you know, intrinsically, the things that have been programmed to you, things that have been nurtured into you, and things that are natural to you. But guys also have these same intrinsic needs, and because people are so worried about these connections and growing and being so afraid to lose these opportunities, they're not observing closely enough the things that matter. If you do, and I think that as much as women think about a guy, they don't necessarily observe them close enough, you'll see that he has certain intrinsic needs. To make a man love you is to fulfill those intrinsic needs that he has. And if you are not fulfilling those intrinsic needs, then he will use you for entertainment. But if you are not aware of even your own intrinsic needs, then he will use you for entertainment, and you'll find yourself coming in and out of frivolous relationships because people are not satiating your natural needs. We have to get out of this thing that the connection is all that matters. No, to draw out the love of a person can be difficult if they don't intend to love, or if you're not going through the proper channels to develop love and connection. Speaking for long periods, the depth of conversation has to be there. Getting what do you need text versus what are you doing text is the difference between talking about things that matter, talking about really intimate and vulnerable subjects with a person, and exchanging those ideas equally, you know, as opposed to what you did today texts, or what you did today conversations, or have you seen that movie conversations. You have to get to a certain amount of depth and a certain amount of vulnerability and a certain amount of openness emotionally before somebody cares enough about you to start either texting you or calling you and trying to figure out what you need and how to satiate your life's needs. The key to getting what do you need versus what do you want texts or calls from a guy is depth of conversation. Depth of conversation. Vulnerability expressed, intimacy level established. If you can establish depth and vulnerability and intimacy in your relationship or a situationship, a person will start to care about you, but that has to be equally exchanged. These flirty text exchanges, these cute conversations that a lot of y'all are having are just not going to get you what you want from a man. At some point, you have to start talking about the things that matter, and you have to do that on a regular basis. And that has to become the culture of your relationship or friendship or situationship. You also have to be willing to wait and establish a friendship. Stop rushing into a relationship. When you see a person and you want them, that's great and all, but you should probably try to figure out if they have the propensity to be a great friend to you, to be a great partner and a teammate for you. That takes a lot of conversations. That takes a lot of emotional investment. That takes a lot of familiarity and vulnerability built. Being cute might get you in a man's bed, but being cute will not get you in his head. Being cute will not make you a priority, right? Being flirty will not do you any favors emotionally with the guy. It's not something that you can frolic your way into the depths of a man's mind and his concern and his sense of responsibility to serve you. That all requires depth, communication, openness, conversation, trust. A man has to trust you to want to serve you. Be friends before you be lovers. And if you are friends before lovers, then you will ultimately start getting more intent from a guy to love you. Stop settling for a great date or a great night and start requiring friendship, real friendship from guys. Guys call their friends and figure out what's wrong with them or what they need, or if there's anything they can do to help. But they don't necessarily do that with the women they talk to because that level of depth isn't established. And the only way you establish that is to actually establish a legitimate friendship. Anyway, that's all I got for now. I hope that helps. Follow me at KFIG24 on Instagram. I'll get with y'all later.